The organ music swells around me, each note vibrating through the cathedral's stone walls like a heartbeat I can no longer feel. My fingers grip the bouquet white roses and baby's breath that cost more than most. People's monthly rent end, I can smell their sickeningly sweet perfume mixing with the incense and the collective breath of 300 guests who came to witness what they believe will be the happiest day of my life. Do you, Margaret Elizabeth Thornton, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Father Mackenzie's voice echoes off the vaulted ceiling, and I can see David standing beside me in my peripheral vision. Monsieur. His Armani tuxedo fits him perfectly, tailored to emphasize his broad shoulders and narrow waist. The same shoulders I've cried on. The same waist my arms have wrapped around during countless nights when I believed we were building something real together. To have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, till death do you part. The words hang in the air like smoke, and I can feel the weight of every gaze upon me. My mother sits in the front pew, her handkerchief already damp with tears of joy. David's parents beside her, stone-faced as always, but present nonetheless. Behind them, a sea of faces, colleagues from the law firm where I made partner last year. Friends from college, distant relatives who flew in from across the country. I open my mouth to speak the words I've rehearsed 1,000 times. The words that will legally bind me to the man I've loved for 4 years, when David's hand moves to his jacket pocket. I begin, but he's pulling something out. Not the ring box we rehearsed with yesterday, but a folded set of papers. The congregation shifts slightly, a collective intake of breath as David unfolds what I now recognize as legal documents. The letterhead is from Morrison, Blake & Associates, not his firm, but the one across town that specializes in family law. Actually, David says, his voice carrying clearly through the cathedral's acoustics. Before we continue, there's something Margaret needs to sign. Father Mackenzie's eyebrows furrow, and I can hear my mother's sharp gasp echo from the front pew. The organist's hands freeze mid-chord, leaving us in a silence so complete I can hear the flutter of wings from the doves in the bell tower. David extends the papers toward me, and I can see the bold text at the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Below that, in smaller print details I can't quite make out from this distance, but I don't need to. I know what this is. You want me to sign divorce papers, I say? My voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. At our wedding, it's more efficient this way, David replies. And there's something in his tone, a coldness I've never heard before. Like he's discussing a business merger rather than the destruction of our relationship. We can file immediately after the ceremony. No waiting period, no messy proceedings later. The cathedral erupts in whispers, a low hum of confusion and shock that builds like a storm. I can see David's mother lean forward, her face a mask of barely contained fury. My own mother has gone pale, her handkerchief pressed to her mouth as if she might be sick. But I don't look away from David's face. His blue eyes, the ones I used to think held entire oceans of possibility, are flat now, businesslike. His jaw is set in that determined way I've seen him use during difficult negotiations at work. This is just another deal to him, another contract to execute. Why? The word comes out as barely a whisper, but in the cathedral's acoustics, it carries. Because I've been thinking, David says, adjusting his tie with his free hand while still holding the papers with the other, about what marriage really means, about compatibility, about long-term financial planning. He's speaking like he's delivering a presentation to clients. His voice measured and professional. Behind him, his best man, his brother James, shifts uncomfortably, clearly as blindsided as everyone else. I've realized, David continues, that while we work well together in many ways, our fundamental approaches to life are incompatible. You're too emotional, Margaret, too impulsive. Marriage is a business partnership, and I need a partner who understands that. The words hit me like physical blows, each one precisely aimed. Too emotional, too impulsive. As if my capacity to feel deeply, to love without reservation, is a character flaw rather than the very thing that drew him to me in the first place. I think about the night he proposed 6 months ago on the beach in Monterey. How he'd gotten down on one knee in the sand, the waves crashing behind him, and told me I was the only woman who could make him believe in forever. How I'd cried, too emotional apparently, and said yes without hesitation. I think about the months of planning that followed. The dress fittings, the cake tastings, the endless discussions about flowers and music and seating arrangements. How he'd seemed genuinely excited, talking about our honeymoon in Tuscany, about the house we'd buy in the hills overlooking the bay. I think about last night, our rehearsal dinner, when he'd stood up to give a toast and called me the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. How his voice had caught slightly on the words and I'd thought it was emotion. Now I wonder if it was guilt. You planned this, I say, and it's not a question. You've been planning this. David nods, as if I've finally grasped a concept he's been trying to explain. The wedding was always going to happen. Too much money invested, too many people invited to cancel. But I realized we could use the occasion to handle the dissolution efficiently. Kill two birds with one stone, so to speak. Kill two birds with one stone. He's talking about our marriage, our love, like it's a logistical problem to be solved. The cathedral has grown quieter now, the initial shock settling into a heavy, expectant silence. I can feel 300 pairs of eyes watching me, waiting to see how I'll respond. Will I cry? Will I scream? Will I run? Instead, I smile. It starts small, just a slight upturn at the corners of my mouth, but it grows until I'm beaming at David with the same radiant joy I'd planned to show him when we exchanged rings. The smile seems to unsettle him more than tears would have. His confident expression wavers slightly. You know what, David? I say, my voice carrying clearly through the cathedral. You're absolutely right. I reach for the papers and he hands them over with obvious relief. The documents are thick, professionally prepared. I can see my name typed neatly in the appropriate spaces, David's signature already in place at the bottom. All that's missing is mine. Marriage is a business partnership, I continue, flipping through the pages, and you're right, we are incompatible. I believe in love, loyalty, and keeping promises. You believe in efficiency, convenience, and cutting your losses. I can see the divorce terms as I scan the documents. He is asking for half of everything, including the law practice I built from nothing while he was still in law school. Half of the house I bought with my inheritance from my grandmother. Half of the investments I made with bonuses from cases I won through 60-hour weeks and sleepless nights. This is very thorough, I say, still smiling. You've really thought of everything. David relaxes slightly, interpreting my calm as acceptance. I knew you'd understand eventually. You're a lawyer, Margaret. You know how these things work. I do indeed. I flip to the final page where my signature line waits. And as a lawyer, I also know that these papers aren't worth the expensive stationery they're printed on. David's expression shifts from relief to confusion. What do you mean? I say, my smile growing wider, that we're not actually married yet, David. Father Mackenzie hasn't pronounced us husband and wife. I haven't said I do to the final question. Legally speaking, we're still just two people standing in formal wear in front of a priest. The realization dawns on his face slowly, like sunrise breaking over a mountain range. His mouth opens slightly, then closes again. You can't divorce someone you're not married to, I continue, my voice warm and conversational, as if I'm explaining something simple to a child. These papers are meaningless, void, completely without legal standing. I hold the documents up so the congregation can see them, then begin tearing them in half. The sound of ripping paper echoes through the cathedral like thunder. I tear them again and again until David's carefully prepared dissolution petition becomes nothing but confetti in my hands. But since you've made your feelings so clear, I say, letting the pieces flutter to the marble floor around my feet, I think we can consider this relationship officially terminated. I turn to Father Mackenzie, who has been watching this entire exchange with the fascinated horror of someone witnessing a car accident in slow motion. Father, I'm afraid there won't be a wedding today after all. The groom has just informed me that he finds me fundamentally incompatible with his life goals. Father Mackenzie nods slowly, clearly relieved to have some direction in this unprecedented situation. I see. Well then, I suppose ... you suppose correctly, I say. There's nothing more to be done here. I turn back to David, who is standing frozen in place, still processing what just happened. His face has gone pale beneath his carefully applied makeup, and I can see a vein pulsing in his temple. Margaret, he says, his voice strained, you're being irrational. We can discuss this privately, work something out ... Oh, but David, I reply, my smile never wavering. I thought you said I was too emotional, too impulsive. Surely you don't want to negotiate with someone so fundamentally flawed. I can see his jaw working as he struggles to find words. Behind him, James looks like he wants to disappear into the marble floor. In the congregation, the whispers have started again, building to a low roar of speculation and shock. Besides, I continue, I think you've made your position quite clear. Marriage is a business partnership, and you've just informed your potential business partner that you consider her unfit for the position. In any other context, that would be the end of the negotiation. I bend down and gather my train, the heavy silk and lace that cost more than most people's cars. When I straighten up, I'm still smiling, but there's something different in my eyes now. Something David has never seen before. I do want to thank you though, I say, for showing me exactly who you are before I made the mistake of legally binding myself to you. That really was efficient. I turn toward the aisle, toward the massive oak doors at the back of the cathedral, toward whatever comes next. But before I take my first step, I pause and look back at David one more time. Oh, and David? The ring? He looks down at his hand, where the platinum wedding band we chose together still sits on his finger. He'd put it on during the rehearsal yesterday and never taken it off. I think you should keep it, I say. Consider it a reminder of what happens when you mistake efficiency for wisdom. I begin walking down the aisle, my heels clicking against the marble in a steady rhythm that echoes through the cathedral like a heartbeat. With each step, I can feel the weight of 300 gazes following me, but I don't look back. I keep my shoulders straight, my chin up, my smile firmly in place. As I pass the front pew, I see my mother's face, shocked, worried, but also something else. Pride, maybe, or relief. She reaches out as if to touch my hand, but I'm already past her, moving toward the doors with the steady determination of someone who knows exactly where she's going. Behind me, I can hear David calling my name, his voice cracking slightly on the second syllable. There's panic in it now. The sound of someone who has just realized that his carefully calculated plan has backfired spectacularly. Margaret, wait. We can talk about this. But I don't stop. I don't even slow down. I push through the heavy oak doors and emerge into the afternoon sunlight, where the hired photographer is waiting to capture our joyful exit as husband and wife. Instead, he gets a shot of a bride walking alone, her smile radiant and her head held high. The limousine David hired to take us to our reception is waiting at the curb, the driver standing beside the open door with a confused expression. He's clearly wondering where the groom is, why the bride is alone, why she looks so happy about it. Change of plans, I tell him, gathering my skirts to climb into the back seat. Just me today. Where to, miss? He asks, still confused but professional enough to roll with whatever is happening. I think for a moment, considering my options. The reception venue where 200 guests are waiting for a party that will never happen? My apartment, where every surface holds memories of David? My office, where I can bury myself in work and pretend this day never happened? The airport, I say finally. International terminal. Any particular airline, miss? I laugh, and it's the first genuine sound I've made all day. Whichever one has a flight to Italy leaving soonest. As the limousine pulls away from the cathedral, I catch a glimpse of David in the side mirror. He's standing on the steps in his perfect tuxedo, surrounded by confused wedding guests, holding the torn pieces of his divorce papers. He looks smaller somehow, diminished by his own cruelty. I settle back into the leather seats and close my eyes, feeling the tension leave my shoulders for the first time in months, maybe years. I think about the honeymoon suite in Tuscany that's waiting for me now. The vineyard tours, the cooking classes, the long walks through olive groves that I'd planned to take with the man I thought I loved. I'll take them alone instead. And maybe, in the hills overlooking Florence, surrounded by art and beauty and the kind of timeless romance that David could never understand, I'll figure out what comes next. My phone buzzes in my purse, probably David or my mother or any number of people who want to know what just happened, what I'm thinking, what I'm planning to do. But I don't reach for it. Instead, I watch the city blur past the tinted windows and think about how strange it is that the worst day of my life has somehow become the first day of my freedom. The limousine turns onto the highway toward the airport, and I can see planes taking off in the distance, carrying people toward new adventures, new possibilities, new versions of themselves. Soon, I'll be on one of those planes, still wearing my wedding dress but no longer bound by the promises I almost made to a man who saw love as a liability. I think about what David said, that I'm too emotional, too impulsive. Maybe he's right. Maybe a more practical woman would have signed those papers, would have gone through with the charade, would have tried to make it work despite the fundamental incompatibility he'd so clearly demonstrated. But as the airport grows larger in the windshield, as the possibility of escape becomes reality, I realize that my emotions, my capacity to feel deeply, to love completely, to recognize my own worth aren't flaws to be corrected. They're the very things that saved me from a marriage that would have slowly killed everything authentic about who I am. The driver pulls up to the departure terminal, and I can see travelers hurrying in and out with their suitcases and their dreams. I don't have luggage everything. I own is either at the apartment I shared with David, or at the reception venue where our guests are probably still waiting for an explanation that will never come. But I have my passport and my purse, a credit card with a limit high enough to buy whatever I need, and for the first time in years, a future that belongs entirely to me. "Here we are, miss," the driver says, getting out to open my door. I step onto the sidewalk in my wedding dress, the silk and lace brilliant white against the gray concrete. People stare as I walk through the automatic doors. A bride alone at the airport is not something you see every day, but I don't care. Let them stare. Let them wonder. Let them make up their own stories about the woman in white who chose the sky over the altar. At the ticket counter, the agent's eyes widen when she sees me approaching. "I need a ticket to Italy," I say. "Tonight, if possible." "Certainly," she replies, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "May I ask, is this for your honeymoon?" I consider the question for a moment, thinking about all the ways I could answer it. I could tell her the truth that I just walked away from my own wedding, that I'm running towards something I can't yet name. I could say my husband is meeting me there, that this is all part of some romantic plan. Instead, I smile, the same radiant smile I wore when I tore up David's divorce papers, and say, "You could say that. I'm marrying myself to the idea that I deserve better than settling for less than I'm worth." The agent blinks, clearly not sure how to respond to that, but she processes my request with professional efficiency. Within minutes, I have a boarding pass for a flight to Rome that leaves in 3 hours. As I make my way through security, still in my wedding dress, still carrying the bouquet I never threw, I think about David back at the cathedral. By now he's probably realized that his plan wasn't just cruel, it was stupid. He's lost not just a wife but a partner who loved him unconditionally, who supported his career, who would have stood by him through anything. But that's his loss to calculate, his mistake to live with. I have a plane to catch and a life to reclaim. In the departure lounge, I find a quiet corner where I can sit without my dress taking up too much space. I finally reach for my phone, which has been buzzing constantly since I left the cathedral. 17 missed calls from David, 12 from my mother, 8 from my maid of honor, and dozens of text messages I don't have the energy to read. I scroll through them quickly, looking for anything that might be important, but they're all variations on the same theme: shock, concern, demands for explanation. David's messages start angry and grow increasingly desperate as they progress. The last one, sent just 10 minutes ago, simply says, "Please, I made a mistake. Come back." I delete them all without responding. Instead, I open a new message and type, "Flying to Italy tonight. We'll call when I'm ready to talk. Don't wait for me." I send it to my mother, my sister, and my best friend, the people who love me enough to worry, but who will also understand that sometimes you have to disappear for a while to find yourself again. Then I turn off my phone and sit back in the uncomfortable airport chair, watching planes taxi on the runway beyond the windows. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that remind me of the Tuscan sunsets I've seen in photographs. A little girl at the gate across from me is staring at my dress with wide eyes. She tugs on her mother's sleeve and whispers something I can't hear, but I can guess what she's asking. Why is the princess at the airport? Where is her prince? I catch the little girl's eye and wave. She waves back shyly, and I think about what I would tell her if she asked me directly. That sometimes the princess saves herself. That sometimes the real adventure begins when you walk away from the castle. That sometimes the happiest ending is the one you write yourself. Flight 447 to Rome, now boarding first-class passengers. I gather my skirts and stand, my boarding pass in hand. As I walk toward the gate, I can feel the weight of my grandmother's pearls around my neck, the something old I wore for luck. She would have understood what I did today, I think. She was a woman who believed in love but never in settling, who taught me that dignity was worth more than security, that being alone was better than being with someone who didn't value what you brought to the table. The flight attendant scans my boarding pass and smiles. "Congratulations," she says, nodding toward my dress. "Thank you," I reply. "I'm celebrating my independence. She looks confused for a moment, then laughs. Well, that's worth celebrating too. As I settled into my first-class seat, still in my wedding dress, I think about the woman I was this morning, nervous, excited, ready to promise my life to someone who saw me as a liability rather than an asset. That woman feels like a stranger now, someone I used to know but have outgrown. The plane pushes back from the gate as the last light fades from the sky. Below us, the city spreads out in a grid of lights, each one representing someone's life, someone's dreams, someone's story. Somewhere down there, David is probably at the reception venue, trying to explain to 200 guests why there's no bride, no celebration, no happily ever after. But up here, 30,000 feet above the complications and expectations and broken promises, I'm writing a different story. One where the heroine doesn't need rescuing because she's strong enough to rescue herself. One where love means seeing someone clearly and choosing them anyway, not trying to change them into someone more convenient. The flight attendant brings me Champagne d'Ampérignon, the same brand David and I had planned to toast with at our reception. I raise the glass toward the window, toward the stars that are just becoming visible in the darkening sky. To efficiency, I say quietly, thinking of David's favorite word, and to the beautiful inefficiency of following your heart. I drink the champagne and watch the world disappear below the clouds, carrying me toward a country I've never seen, toward adventures I can't yet imagine, toward a version of myself I'm only just beginning to discover. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm exactly where I want to be. The plane touches down in Rome as the sun rises over the eternal city, painting the ancient stones in shades of gold and amber that no photograph could ever capture. I'm still wearing my wedding dress, though it's wrinkled now from the long flight, and I've lost count of how many people have stared at me with curiosity, amusement, or concern. In the taxi from the airport, the driver, a weathered man named Giuseppe, who speaks broken English mixed with enthusiastic Italian, keeps glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "Sposata?" he asks finally. "Married?" "No," I reply, surprising myself with how easily the word comes. "Libera. Free." He grins and nods approvingly, then launches into a rapid stream of Italian that I don't understand, but that sounds like approval. When we reach the hotel in Trastevere, small boutique place I chose randomly from my phone during a layover in Frankfurt, he refuses to let me pay the full fare. "Bella donna libera," he says, waving away my euros. Roma loves the free women. The hotel clerk's eyes widen when I approach the desk in my wedding dress, but she's too professional to comment. She simply hands me my key and directs me to the elevator with a smile that might be sympathetic or might be admiring, I can't tell which. My room overlooks a small piazza where old men are already setting up for their morning chess games and women are hanging laundry from wrought iron balconies. The scene is so perfectly stereotypically Italian that it almost seems staged. But there's something comforting about its predictability after the chaos of yesterday. I stand at the window for a long time, still in my dress, watching the city wake up. Rome has been here for thousands of years, has seen empires rise and fall, has witnessed countless human dramas play out in its streets and squares. My small heartbreak is nothing in the context of all that history, but somehow that makes it easier to bear rather than harder. My phone, which I turned back on during the layover, shows 43 missed calls and over 100 text messages. I scroll through them briefly. David's messages have evolved from anger to panic to what looks like genuine remorse. My mother is worried sick, and my sister wants to fly out to wherever I am to make sure I'm okay. But there's one message that stops me cold. It's from James, David's brother and best man, sent just 2 hours ago. "Margaret, I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted you to know that what David did was unforgivable. I've known him my whole life, and I've never been more ashamed to be his brother. You handled it with more grace than he deserved. I hope you find whatever you're looking for." I stare at the message for a long time, surprised by how much it means to me. In all the chaos and hurt of yesterday, I hadn't thought about how David's actions affected other people, his family, our friends, the guests who came to celebrate what they thought would be a joyful occasion. I type back, "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." Then I turn off my phone again and focus on the view from my window. A young couple is walking across the piazza hand in hand, and I watch them with interest rather than envy. They look happy, genuinely connected, the way David and I used to look before efficiency became more important than emotion. I realize I need to get out of this dress. It's beautiful, a custom design that took months to create, but it belongs to yesterday. To the woman who thought she was going to promise her life to someone who saw her as a business proposition. In the hotel's boutique, I buy a simple sundress, sandals, and a straw hat. The saleswoman, a chic Italian woman in her 50s, takes one look at my wedding dress and immediately understands the situation. Amor? She asks, her voice gentle. Benito, I reply, using one of the few Italian words I know. She nods knowingly and helps me select clothes that are comfortable, practical, and nothing like the elaborate gown I'm leaving behind. When I emerge from the dressing room in my new outfit, she claps her hands together approvingly. Bellissima, she says. Now you look like a woman who belongs to herself. I leave the wedding dress in the hotel room. I don't pack it, don't arrange to have it shipped home, don't even hang it up properly. I simply leave it draped over the chair by the window, a white ghost of the life I almost chose. Rome welcomes me like an old friend. I spend the morning wandering through the Villa Borghese, letting myself get lost among the sculptures and fountains. I eat lunch at a tiny trattoria where the owner's grandmother makes pasta by hand and where no one speaks English, but everyone understands the universal language of good food and human kindness. In the afternoon, I find myself at the Trevi Fountain, surrounded by tourists making wishes and taking selfies. The tradition says you're supposed to throw a coin over your shoulder to ensure your return to Rome, but I don't want to return. I want to stay present, to be here now, to stop planning for futures that may never come. Instead, I sit on the steps and watch the water cascade over the Baroque sculptures, thinking about the conversation I'll eventually have to have with David, because despite everything, despite his cruelty and his calculated betrayal, there are practical matters to resolve. The apartment we shared, the joint accounts, the life we built together that now needs to be carefully dismantled. But not today. Today, I'm just a woman in Rome, eating gelato and learning to be alone without being lonely. As the sun sets, I find myself in a small wine bar in Trastevere, the kind of place where locals gather to argue about football and politics. The owner, a man named Marco, who reminds me of my grandfather, takes one look at me sitting alone and decides I need taking care of. You are sad, he says in careful English, setting a glass of Chianti in front of me without being asked. Not sad, I correct him. Free. He considers this for a moment, then nods. Ah, so free is sometimes the same as sad, but not always. Tonight, you drink to freedom, we toast to freedom, and I tell him my story. Not all of it, but enough. How I walked away from a wedding, how I came to Rome to figure out what comes next, how I'm learning to trust my own instincts again. Marco listens without judgment, occasionally refilling my glass or offering small plates of cheese and olives. When I finish talking, he's quiet for a long moment. You know what I think? He says finally. I think this man, he did you a favor. Better to know who someone is before you marry them than after. It's such a simple observation, but it hits me with the force of revelation. David did do me a favor. His cruelty was also his honesty. He showed me exactly who he was when he thought he had me trapped, when he believed I had no choice but to accept his terms. But why did he wait until the wedding? I ask. Why not just break up with me months ago? Marco shrugs in that particularly Italian way that encompasses all of life's mysteries. Maybe he thought you would not leave. Maybe he thought you needed him more than he needed you. Maybe he has just come C-dice an idiot. I laugh, and it feels good to laugh about it. Definitely an idiot. An idiota. But his stupidity is your liberation, no? As the evening progresses, other patrons drift in and out of the wine bar. A young couple celebrating an anniversary, an older woman meeting friends after work, a group of university students debating philosophy with the passion that only comes with youth and wine. I watch them all, feeling like an anthropologist studying the rituals of human connection. Around midnight, Marco walks me back to my hotel, his protective instincts apparently extending to all lost souls who wash up in his establishment. The streets of Trastevere are quiet now, lit by old-fashioned street lamps that cast long shadows on the cobblestones. Tomorrow, he says as we reach the hotel entrance, you come back. I teach you to make proper carbonara. Is important skill for free woman. I promise I will, and I mean it. There's something about Marco's uncomplicated kindness that makes me want to stay in his orbit a little longer, to learn whatever wisdom he's willing to share. Back in my room, I finally turn on my phone to check for any genuine emergencies. Most of the messages are more of the same: concern, confusion. demands for explanation. But there's one from my law partner, Patricia, that makes me smile. Saw the news about the wedding. Don't know what happened, but knowing you, I'm sure you handled it perfectly. Take all the time you need. The firm will survive without you for a while. Puss, I never liked. David, anyway. There's also a message from my sister. Mom told me what happened. I'm proud of you for walking away. You deserve someone who sees your strength as an asset, not a liability. Love you. And surprisingly, there's another message from James. David's been calling everyone, trying to get someone to tell him where you are. I told him he lost the right to that information when he humiliated you in front of 300 people. Just wanted you to know that not everyone in our family is an ass. I typed back to my sister. I'm safe and figuring things out. We'll call soon. To James. Thank you for standing up for me. It means everything. To Patricia. You're right. You never did like him. I should have listened to you. Then I turn off the phone again and prepare for bed. Tomorrow I'll learn to make carbonara. I'll explore more of Rome. I'll continue the process of figuring out who I am when I'm not defined by my relationship to someone else. But tonight I'm just grateful to be here in this ancient city that has seen everything and judges nothing. Learning that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having your worst fears confirmed before it's too late to change course. I fall asleep to the sound of footsteps on cobblestones and distant laughter, dreaming of pasta and freedom and the infinite possibilities that open up when you choose. Yourself over settling for less than you deserve. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in a cafe overlooking the Arno River in Florence. My laptop open to a document titled Thornton vs. Thornton Asset Division. The irony of the name isn't lost on me. We share a last name, but we never shared a life, not really. My phone rings and David's name appears on the screen. I've been avoiding his calls for weeks, but my lawyer says we need to have this conversation eventually. I take a deep breath and answer. Hello, David. Margaret? His voice sounds strained, exhausted. Thank God you finally answered. We need to talk. I'm listening. Where are you? I've been worried sick. You just disappeared. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, I interrupt. What do you want to talk about? There's a long pause, and I can hear traffic in the background. He's probably calling from his office, surrounded by the law books and diplomas that matter more to him than human connection. I want to apologize, he says finally. What I did was ... it was wrong. I was scared, Margaret. Scared of making a mistake, scared of not being practical enough. I thought if we could just handle the legal aspects efficiently, you thought you could have your cake and eat it too, I say, watching a tour boat drift down the river below. You wanted the wedding, the celebration, the appearance of commitment, but you also wanted an escape clause. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, David. You wanted to marry me and divorce me on the same day. I wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone we know. And then you wanted me to be grateful for your efficiency. Another long pause. I know how it looked. David, you handed me divorce papers during our wedding vows. There's no other way to interpret that except as the cruelest, most calculated rejection imaginable. I was trying to be honest about my concerns. No, I say, my voice sharp enough to cut through his excuses. You were trying to have it both ways. You were trying to keep me as a backup plan while protecting yourself from any real emotional risk. I can hear him breathing, on the other end of the line, and for a moment I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Margaret, please, come home. We can work this out. I'll go to counseling, I'll do whatever you want. What I want, I say, is for you to sign the papers my lawyer is sending you. Clean break, no contest. You can keep the apartment, I never liked it anyway. I'll keep my practice, my investments, and my dignity. You can't be serious. We've been together for 4 years, and in 4 years, you never once saw me as an equal partner. I was always to something too emotional, too impulsive, too much. Well, now you don't have to deal with too much of me ever again. That's not fair. I love you. No, David, you love the idea of me. You love having a successful, attractive girlfriend who makes you look good at firm parties. But you don't love me, because if you did, you never could have done what you did. The tour boat disappears under a bridge, and I watch the ripples spread across the water's surface. Everything creates ripples, I think. Every action, every choice, every moment of cruelty or kindness sends waves through the world in ways we can't always predict. I made a mistake, David says, and there's something desperate in his voice now. People make mistakes, Margaret. That doesn't mean we throw away everything we built together. We didn't build anything together. David, I built a life, and you lived in it when it was convenient. The moment it became inconvenient, you tried to tear it down. So that's it, 4 years, and you're just walking away? I think about this question for a moment. Watching the Italian families stroll along the riverbank below, children running ahead while parents follow with patient smiles. I'm not walking away from 4 years, I say finally. I'm walking toward the rest of my life. There's a difference. Margaret, goodbye, David. Sign the papers. I hang up and turn off my phone, then sit back in my chair and breathe deeply. The conversation went better than I expected. I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't let him manipulate me into feeling guilty for his choices. A waiter approaches and asks if I'd like another espresso. I nod, then close my laptop and put it away. I've done enough legal work for one day. Instead, I pull out the journal I've been keeping since I arrived in Italy. It started as a way to process what happened, but it's become something more, a record of who I'm becoming. A map of the territory I'm exploring as I learn to be alone without being lonely. Today's entry begins. Had the conversation with David. Felt nothing but relief when I hung up. Is this what closure feels like? Not dramatic or cathartic, just finished? I write about the morning I spent at the Uffizi, standing in front of Botticelli's Birth of Venus and thinking about transformation. About emerging from the sea as someone entirely new. I write about the cooking class I took yesterday, where I learned to make risotto from a grandmother who spoke no English, but taught me everything I needed to know through gestures and smiles. I write about Marco, who has become something like a surrogate father, checking on me every few days and introducing me to his extended network of friends and relatives. Through him, I've met artists and teachers, shop owners and students, people who have welcomed me into their lives with the casual generosity that seems uniquely Italian. And I write about the realization that's been growing stronger each day. I don't want to go back to the life I had before. Not to David, obviously, but not to the version of myself that I was when I was with him either. That Margaret was successful but cautious, accomplished but always seeking approval, strong but somehow smaller than she needed to be. This Margaret, the one sitting in a cafe in Florence, writing in a journal while planning her next adventure, feels more like who I was always meant to be. My phone buzzes with a text from my sister. How did the call go? I type back, better than expected. I think I'm finally ready to come home. When? I look around the cafe, at the art students sketching in the corner, at the businessman reading his newspaper with the intense concentration that Italians bring to everything, at the young mother patiently helping her toddler navigate a gelato cone. Soon, I type, but not yet. I'm not finished becoming myself. 3 dots appear, then disappear, then appear again. Finally, I love you. Take all the time you need. That evening, I have dinner with Marco and his wife, Sophia, at their apartment above the wine bar. It's a small space filled with photographs and books and the kind of comfortable clutter that accumulates over 40 years of marriage. Sophia, who speaks better English than her husband, asks me about my conversation with David. I tell her the basics, and she nods knowingly. Men like that, she says, they think love is like a business contract. They want to negotiate the terms, minimize their risk, maximize their return. But love is not a contract. Love is a leap of faith. David was never good at leaps of faith, I admit. Then he was never good at love, Marco says simply. And you are better without him. After dinner, we sit on their small balcony overlooking the piazza, drinking wine and watching the evening passeggiata, the ritual stroll that brings the whole neighborhood out to see and be seen. What will you do when you go home? Sophia asks. It's a question I've been avoiding. But sitting here with these kind people who have become my temporary family, I find myself ready to answer it. I think I'll sell my partnership in the firm, I say. Open my own practice, something smaller, more focused on helping people rather than just making money. And personally, Sophia presses gently. I think about this for a moment, watching a group of teenagers flirt awkwardly in the piazza below. I think I'll be alone for a while, I say. Not because I'm afraid of love, but because I want to make sure that when I do fall in love again, it's with someone who sees my strength as something to celebrate, not something to manage. Marco raises his glass. To being alone by choice, not by default. We toast, and I feel something settle in my chest. Not sadness, but a kind of peaceful resolution. I'm not running away from love. I'm running toward a better version of it. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I open my laptop and begin typing an email to Patricia. I've been thinking about our conversation before. I left about opening a family law practice focused on helping women navigate divorce and custody issues. Are you still interested in being partners? I have some ideas about how we could do things differently, more compassionately. Let me know if you want to talk when I get back. I send the email, then open a new document and begin writing something I never thought I'd write. A letter to David. David, I begin, then stop. What do I want to say to him? What needs to be said that hasn't already been said? I delete his name and start over. To the man I almost married, I want you to know that I forgive you. Not because what you did was forgivable, but because carrying anger towards you would be like carrying a stone in my pocket. It would only weigh me down. I also want to thank you. Your cruelty was also your honesty, and your honesty saved me from a marriage that would have slowly killed everything authentic about who I am. You showed me that I am stronger than I knew, more resilient than I believed, and worthy of a love that doesn't come with conditions and escape clauses. I hope someday you learn the difference between efficiency and wisdom, between managing risk and embracing possibility. I hope you find someone who fits your spreadsheet version of love, and I hope she makes you happy. But mostly I hope you learn that the things you've called my weaknesses, my capacity to feel deeply, to love without reservation, to trust completely, are actually my greatest strengths. I will not be sending this letter. It's not for you. It's for me. It's my way of closing this chapter and opening the next one. I wish you well, but I wish myself better. Margaret, I saved the document, but don't send it. Like I said, it's not for him. It's for me, a way of putting words to the transformation that's been happening inside me these past few weeks. I close the laptop and get ready for bed, thinking about tomorrow's plans. I'm taking a train to the Tuscan countryside, to a small town where I've rented a villa for a week. I want to see the olive groves and vineyards I've been reading about, to walk through landscapes that have inspired artists for centuries. But more than that, I want to spend some time in complete solitude, away from the kind distractions of new friends and tourist attractions. I want to sit with myself, with who I'm becoming, and make sure I'm ready for whatever comes next. As I drift off to sleep, I think about the conversation I had with David earlier. His voice had sounded smaller somehow, diminished by his own choices. I felt sorry for him, but not in a way that made me want to rescue him or fix what he had broken. Some people, I realize, are so afraid of being hurt that they hurt others first. Some people are so focused on protecting themselves that they forget to actually live. I don't want to be that kind of person. I want to be the kind of person who takes risks, who loves completely, who trusts wisely, but trusts nonetheless. I want to be the kind of person who, when faced with divorce papers at her own wedding, can smile and walk away with her dignity intact. I want to be exactly who I'm becoming. The villa in Tuscany sits on a hillside overlooking a valley dotted with cypress trees and stone. Farmhouses that look like they've been there since the Renaissance. It's smaller than I expected, but perfect in its simplicity. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with windows that open onto herb gardens, and a terrace where I can sit with my morning coffee and watch the mist rise from the valley below. I've been here for 3 days now, and I'm starting to understand why people talk about the healing power of this landscape. There's something about the way the light changes throughout the day, the way the hills roll toward the horizon like a Renaissance painting come to life, that makes everything else seem manageable. This morning, I wake before dawn and make my way to the terrace with a cup of coffee and my journal. The sky is just beginning to lighten, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold that would look artificial in a photograph but seem perfectly natural here. I write, Day 24 in Italy. Day 3 at the villa. I think I'm finally ready to go home, but not because I'm running away from anything, because I'm ready to run towards something. A text from my lawyer interrupts my writing. David signed the papers. Clean break, just like you wanted. Congratulations on your freedom. I stare at the message for a long moment, waiting for some emotional response, relief, sadness, anger, something. But all I feel is a kind of quiet satisfaction, like checking an item off a to-do list. It's over, officially, legally, completely over. I call my sister, forgetting about the time difference until she answers with a groggy hello. Sorry, did I wake you, Margaret? What time is it? Are you okay? I'm fine. Better than fine. David signed the divorce papers. There's a pause as she processes this. How do you feel? Free, I say, and I mean it. Actually, genuinely free. Good. You deserve to be free. When are you coming home? I look out over the valley, where the morning light is just beginning to touch the tops of the olive trees. Soon. I'm ready now. Ready for what? Ready to start over. Ready to build something new. Ready to be the person I was always supposed to be. After I hang up, I sit on the terrace for another hour, watching the world wake up around me. A farmer drives his truck down the dirt road below, heading out to check his vines. A cat picks its way delicately through the herb garden, pausing to sniff at the rosemary before moving on. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chime the hour. It's all so peaceful, so timeless, that I can almost forget about the chaos I left behind in San Francisco. Almost forget about David and his divorce papers, about the wedding that never happened, about the life I thought I wanted but never really did. But I don't want to forget, not entirely. I want to remember this feeling, this sense of possibility, this knowledge that I am enough on my own, this confidence that whatever comes next will be better than what came before. I spend the morning walking through the olive groves, following paths that wind between ancient trees whose gnarled trunks tell stories of centuries of harvest and renewal. The owner of the villa, an elderly woman named Francesca, who lives in the main house at the bottom of the hill, told me that some of these trees are over 500 years old. They have seen everything, she said in her careful English. Wars, famines, celebrations, heartbreaks. But they keep growing, keep producing fruit. They know that survival is not just about enduring, it is about continuing to give something beautiful to the world. I think about that as I walk among the trees, their silver green leaves rustling in the morning breeze. Survival isn't just about enduring, it's about continuing to give something beautiful to the world. What beauty do I want to give? What mark do I want to leave? By the time I return to the villa, I have my answer. I want to help other women find their strength, their voices, their way out of situations that diminish them. I want to practice law in a way that honors the human story behind every case, that treats divorce not as a business transaction, but as a rebirth. I want to use what I've learned about resilience, about self-worth, about the difference between being alone and being lonely, to help others navigate their own transformations. I spend the afternoon on my laptop, researching what it would take to start a practice focused on family law and women's advocacy. I look into office spaces in San Francisco, I research grant opportunities for legal aid work, draft a business plan that prioritizes compassion over profit margins. For the first time in months, I feel excited about work. Not just successful or accomplished, but genuinely excited about the possibility of building something meaningful. As the sun begins to set, I pour myself a glass of Chianti from the bottle Francesca left as a welcome gift and return to the terrace. The valley below is bathed in golden light, and I can see why the Renaissance masters were so inspired by this landscape. Everything here seems touched by beauty, blessed by some kind of grace. My phone rings, and I'm surprised to see James's name on the screen. James? Is everything okay? Hi, Margaret. Sorry to bother you. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. Of course. What's going on? I just wanted you to know that David told me about the divorce papers. That you're officially... Well, that it's official. Yes, it's official. And I wanted to apologize again. For my family, for my brother, for the whole mess. You didn't deserve any of it. I'm touched by his concern, by his continued willingness to reach out despite the awkwardness of the situation. Thank you, James. That means a lot. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? I know that's a weird question, but I keep thinking about how you handled everything, how strong you were, and I just... I hope you're happy. I consider the question as I watch the last light fade from the sky. Am I happy? It's more complicated than that, but also simpler. I'm not happy the way I thought I would be on my wedding day. I say finally. But I'm happy in a way I never expected. I'm happy with who I'm becoming. Good. That's good. You deserve to be happy, Margaret. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are. Thank you. And James? You're a good man. Don't let your brother's mistakes make you think otherwise about your family. You stood up for what was right when it mattered. After we hang up, I sit in the gathering darkness and think about the different kinds of love I've experienced in my life. There was the passionate, all-consuming love I felt for David in the beginning, when everything was new and possible. There was the comfortable, familiar love that developed over time, the kind that made me think we could build a life together. But there was never the kind of love that sees you clearly and chooses you anyway. The kind that celebrates your strengths instead of trying to manage your weaknesses. It's the kind that makes you more yourself, not less. Maybe that kind of love will come someday. Maybe it won't. But I know now that I don't need it to be complete. I am already complete, already whole, already enough. The stars are beginning to appear in the Tuscan sky, and I can hear the distant sound of laughter from the village below. Somewhere, people are gathering for dinner, sharing stories, celebrating the simple fact of being alive and connected to each other. I think about the dinner I'll have tomorrow night, my last night in Italy with Marco and Sofia, who insisted on driving up from Florence to say goodbye. I think about the cooking lesson Francesca promised to give me, teaching me to make the kind of simple, perfect pasta that can only be learned from someone who has been making it for 70 years. I think about the flight home the day after tomorrow, about the apartment I'll need to find, about the practice I'll build, about the life I'll create from scratch. But mostly I think about the woman who walked down that cathedral aisle 3 weeks ago, ready to promise her life to someone who saw her as a liability. That woman feels like someone I used to know, someone I've outgrown but remember fondly. This woman, the one sitting on a terrace in Tuscany, planning a future that belongs entirely to her, feels like who I was always meant to be. My phone buzzes with one last message of the day from my mother. "Your father and I are so proud of you, sweetheart. We can't wait to have you home." I smile and type back, "I can't wait to be home, but I'm bringing a different version of myself with me. We can't wait to meet her," comes the immediate reply. I close my phone and lean back in my chair, breathing in the night air that smells of lavender and possibility. Tomorrow I'll start packing. I'll say goodbye to this place that has given me so much solitude, clarity, the space to become who I needed to be. But tonight, I'll just sit here under the Tuscan stars and appreciate the strange, painful, beautiful journey that brought me here. The wedding that wasn't, the marriage that never was, the divorce papers that set me free before I even needed freeing. David thought he was being efficient when he handed me those papers. He thought he was managing risk, protecting himself, keeping his options open. What he actually did was give me the greatest gift of my life, the chance to choose myself over settling, to walk away from less than I deserved, to discover that I am stronger and more resilient than I ever imagined. In the distance, church bells chime midnight, marking the end of another day in this ancient place where time moves differently, where healing happens at the pace of olive trees and sunset light. I raise my glass of wine to the stars, to the journey that brought me here, to the woman I was and the woman I'm becoming. To efficiency, I say quietly, echoing the toast I made on the airplane 3 weeks ago, and to the beautiful inefficiency of following your heart. Even when it leads you away from everything you thought you wanted. The wine is perfect, the night is perfect, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, so am I.